Our work at SM Graves Associates happens every day at the fascinating intersections that happen in our economic lives. You know, work, the community, physical spaces that we all choose to inhabit, the spaces we inhabit inside our mind, too. The work that we're all doing here demands of us that we understand orchestration. We understand how multiple disciplines come together, how they work together, human behavior, space restrictions in our physical world. I mean, all of it, all the phenomenon you can think of that work together to create what we call reality. And what we're trying to do at our place of business is prove out alternatives to that reality. That's essentially what it is that we're doing. And for some time, it's really become clear to me that there exists a disconnect that's preventing so many of our communities from launching into their own version of a new reality. I think we're not focused on organic growth of municipal revenues enough. Let me explain. Our culture has refined the notion that taxes are bad and that attention needs to be paid to reducing or eliminating those taxes. You know, just to give you an idea, I'm 46 years old, and I simply can't remember a time when there wasn't at least some portion of our population, constantly talking about taxes from the standpoint, if they're talking about them at all, it's really from the standpoint of how do I reduce my tax liability as much as possible, how unfair taxes are. There's really largely a negative sort of connotation towards what we might call the culture of taxes and taxation, right? And at the same time, there's abstractly this idea. We're convinced that by reducing taxes, somehow that's going to lead to greater outcomes that we expect to see at the local level, right? Schools will be better funded. Businesses will start to grow. Residents' property taxes will level off or reduce, even though they're feeling pressure on those. And I think that more than any other way to describe just that phenomenon, it's really a cultural phenomenon and a cultural problem. It's leading to a very economic problem. And at the same time, it's been ingrained in our population that taxes are bad and government is the problem. Manufacturing and other middle-class career options, well, they've been eliminated too. And with them, communities, rural and urban, have less and less opportunity to balance out their municipal revenue needs through taxation, and especially through commercial property taxes. And that kind of environment means that there's less and less commercial property tax opportunity in a community. So, and as that happens, the money required to meet minimum requirements will increasingly be accessed by increasing residential property taxes, right? Now, as that's happening, you've got another fact, which is that as commercial opportunities leave, young people are going to leave those communities too, because they're going to seek work elsewhere as the job opportunities and the career opportunities are less and less. I mean, even if you said, well, they could start a business in that community, sure, but if they perceive that community to be, it's a losing battle, there just isn't enough of a marketplace for them to open a new business, and they're going to leave too. So what happens is a population of fixed income people, which are primarily either, say, retirees or people that are poor enough where they cannot leave for economic reasons, they become a higher percentage of the population of that community. And they, of course, are the least capable of absorbing tax increases. So it really can create an accelerating spiral as defaults increase in a given community. Communities like the one I live in right now are deep in sort of the throes of this, even as we've just begun to see some new potential interest from afar in our neighborhood through real estate investment. Of course, we've made this worse because we've encouraged, by and large, our planning, our community and economic development people, the folks that work for our cities and towns to help improve community development. We've created this whole system over many decades for them to give away tax incentives. Much of this work involves poaching companies from other communities as opposed to homegrown development of talent and intellectual property from the citizens that are already here. Generally, we encourage them force them really to do very little that would place the community on a long-term trajectory towards economic prosperity. And this is not my denigrating the professionals in the planning and the economic development community. Quite the opposite. I'm a member of that community. I'm just pointing out that this culture that we've created it makes it somewhat difficult to do what we would be doing in the private sector in business as far as sales and business development. Okay, now for the good news, because we're all about solutions. So the solution to me is relatively simple. It's easy to understand, and it can begin virtually overnight. Okay, we must allow municipal planners, our economic developers, our municipal leadership to focus on municipal tax revenue, just like we focus on revenue in our small businesses. And very specifically, it requires a focus on organic. And when I say organic, read into that new and especially commercial tax growth, okay? It should begin, in my opinion, with a close examination of the available physical space, the available real estate. It can be privately owned and especially the publicly owned in a given municipality, coupled with a clear sense for the public's desire, right? If we've got robust public engagement going on and it's ongoing all the time, we'll have a deep understanding of where and how the citizens desire the development of attractive, viable commercial spaces, and then for what purposes. And I do, as I mentioned a moment ago, believe businesses that are homegrown with citizens already in place should be given a priority in that regime. So when in the throes of committee meetings, televised hearings, grant writing sessions, all this work that our professionals do, sometimes it's easy to lose sight of the obvious. If we were to place back online existing underutilized commercial spaces that would otherwise be viable, we'd be creating new business to retain talent while we're increasing tax revenue without subsidies, without grants, and other temporary fixes, right? In turn, over time, given growth like this long enough, we can reduce residential tax liability, which would help fixed income or low-wage workers because it would put them in a better position to create stability in their own households. And frankly, I believe that we don't want to overtax unnecessarily people that are on a fixed income who have worked all their lives and find themselves in a position where no matter how hard they did work and saved for their retirements, they just don't have enough money. At the end of the day, nothing replaces revenue. That what's true in a municipality is true in business, right? There's no amount of cutting budgets that's ever going to lead to a business or a community's prosperity. And it is harder and takes longer to generate revenue. But once you've got real organic growth in any situation, whether it be in private business or at a municipality, no one can take that revenue away from you, so to speak. And in the case of increasing property taxes because of real organic growth in your commercial sector, as opposed to raising the taxes of your existing citizens, for every year that those businesses and the properties that they're in are either back online or are newly minted, it's the gift that keeps on giving every annual tax payment made. So, and then further, if proper attention is paid to creating live-work neighborhoods that respond to the desires of homeowners and the small business people alike, and we get a push away in those communities from suburban development, a community's track on the upward wave may accelerate even better. So, I'm not advocating for a one-size-fits-all solution. I'm not saying this is somehow a magic pill. You shouldn't search for one within my premise. I'm just saying that, in as clear as simple terms as possible, that revenue, it starts with revenue not being considered to be a dirty word, whether that's by, people within a municipality or their tax-paying citizens. If this is all done the right way, we all benefit and we live in a more vibrant and equitable community. That's our discussion for today. I hope you enjoy. You can find out more about my thoughts on economic development and the work that our team does at SM Graves Associates by going to our website at smgravesassociates.com. And really, check out our podcast, which we call Are We Here Yet? That's where we focus on interviews and essays like the one you're listening to, and talk with leaders in economics, urbanism, and culture. And consider subscribing. Subscribe to our media service called The Media Project. And if you happen to like iTunes, please give us a rating there after listening. Thanks.